Right now, hospital executives and administrators are sitting in a boardroom looking at ChatGPT Health and Ambient AI Scribes, but they're not looking at how to cure your burnout. Rather, they're looking at how they can create greater efficiency and how they can put more patient slots into your availability that opens up with the use and the rise of technology. Most physicians look at AI in one of two ways. Either it's this great, exciting new technological advance, which is certainly true in many ways, or it's an absolute threat to their way of life. I spent over a decade in physician and advanced practitioner recruitment and consulting. I've worked with hundreds of clients and doctors from hospitals, private practices, accountable care, academic medical centers. I've spoken on everything from physician mental health and well-being to the physician shortage. I've worked with residencies in putting together curriculum for job searches, how to negotiate contracts. What I do with this channel is I want to share with you all the insider secrets, if you will, the things that I've learned over the years to do my best to try to balance out the playing field, so to speak, as the physician recruitment world is very heavily client focused. I believe very strongly in taking care of those who take care of us. If we don't take care of our doctors, we're going to be in a very difficult situation as a society. The physician shortage is already a crucial problem to begin with. So what I want to talk about here is the threat to healthcare in general, particularly to physicians, and that is AI. I also want to take as an objective a route as possible when looking at this or anything else. There's certainly things to be aware of, but there are also positives and benefits in this. And my goal is to try to help you understand from the best of my ability both those different sides and to know what to do about it as you move forward in your job search and your practice health, wherever you are in your medical career. Let's start with the beginning. First, on how physicians are even being recognized. You might think as a physician that you submit your CV and a recruiter will sit down with a cup of coffee and look over it line by line, address each of the issues, and be ready for a great conversation with you. Maybe, but not as likely as it once was, perhaps 10 years ago. But even over the years, as things have changed from a technological point of view, this has become lesser and lesser of a thing, especially with where we see the trajectory for many physicians tends to be the large groups, hospitals, healthcare centers, systems, these very large groups that have a much easier time of recruiting, and it's much harder to be treated as an individual in these specific situations. And look, this is across the board as ATS, applicant tracking systems, a technology in place well before AI hit the scene, was being utilized. It became harder and harder for anyone, whether for myself when I was working in recruitment, sales and consulting, or someone working in tech or IT. It doesn't matter. In any job out there, the ATS system has made it more and more difficult for CVs and resumes to be seen by individuals. This has historically been less of an issue for physicians. With the increase of AI, that is changing. And so the first thing I really want to talk about and address here is submitting your CV. The truth is, the AI systems are not looking for the kind of things that you might be thinking about. Your bedside manner, your clinical character. They're not looking for your practice excellence. The algorithms instead are algorithms of convenience, looking at things like risk, time to credential risk, physician flight risks like multiple jobs over any short period of time, multiple state licenses, multiple locums in your recent history or even in your history at all. Unless, of course, if you're coming out of residency or fellowship, usually what I say, I've worked in locum tenens and permanent recruitment, and I've always advised it's best as you pursue your career to really pursue one or the other, because the one's hiring one or the other is going to be skeptical of someone that's coming in without that in the background. When I worked with permanent placement, bringing in a CV with a lot of locum tenens was usually an immediate thumbs down. For their perspective, they want someone that's going to be there to practice, stay in practice, and to keep going. From their perspective, excessive locums, excessive state licenses, this is going to be a flight risk. Why would I want to invest the money in onboarding and bringing this person on if they're more than likely not going to stay given their recent history? Whether that's true or false, that's how it's looked at. The same is true on the locum tenens side. Someone with a permanent work background coming into locum tenens, the immediate thing that client's going to ask is, why do they want to do locum tenens now? Are they going to stay? Are they going to take this job? Can I rely on them? Especially if it's a long-term or recurring kind of role, which many of them are. So these are the kind of things that you want to be aware of that are being screened by the ATS, which are enhanced now with AI. And some of the best advice here: format your CVs not for the CMO, not for the medical director, not how you might have traditionally been formatting them. You have to format them for data parsers. Get rid of the columns. Columns are one of the worst things you can put on a CV. The algorithm, the AI will often mess it up. It will put dates in the wrong place. It will screw words up. I'm going to do a talk here a little bit later on putting together a CV and what to think about on how to address issues. Like, another issue that you want to keep in mind is if you've been out of work for any significant period of time, there's certain ways that you want to address that. But these are the kind of things, we'll circle back more on that here in a future talk. But for our purposes here, make sure you're formatting your CV for data parsers, not necessarily upfront for the medical directors or the clinical directors. Look, you can wow and impress someone, but you've got to get in that door first. Let the rest of that happen during your initial phone call, during your on-site interview, when they're reading your references. Second, you want to match your clinical skills with specifically what that job is. In fact, you want to put the title of the job you're applying for rather than the job that you have. So if it says family medicine and you have family practice, change it to family medicine, and vice versa. If it says Epic EHR experience, make sure that you have somewhere in there Epic EHR experience. You want to look at the keywords, you want to look at the requirements, and you want to make sure that your CV is obviously within truth. I'm not encouraging any deception here, but you want to make sure you're stating in there what's on that job description, because that algorithm is going to match them up. If you want to get before someone, you want to get in front of someone, you got to make sure that that's what you're doing. This used to happen even prior to the advance of AI. I remember I was working a urology job, and the job market has been very difficult and challenging for quite some time now. And I posted this job on various job boards. I got a response from someone within just a few seconds of being on the phone with this fellow. I knew he was not a physician. He had no idea what was going on. And just to be sure, I chatted with him for a minute, and I just finally said, "Are you a doctor?" And he said, "No." He said, "No, I'm a plumber." I said, "Well, it's a urology job. They're both dealing with pipes. Let me speak with my client, see if we can work something out." I just can't. I did not say that. Of course, that didn't work out. But he was pretty honest. He said, "Look, I can't find work. I've been putting my resume and application out everywhere. I'm having a hard time. I didn't even know it was a physician job board. I've put it everywhere I could." And this was happening even before. The job market is very difficult. People are sending their resumes and applications to absolutely everything and everywhere possible. So a lot of these places, they have to employ ATS and AI, or they will never be able to get through the volume of applications that they're getting. Next, let's talk about Ambient AI Scribes. A lot of hospitals and employers are very excited about this, and you should be too. There's a lot of great stuff that can come out of this. Having an Ambient AI Scribe can significantly help in many ways. However, the unfortunate reality of the corporate world is the corporate world abhors the vacuum, as they say about nature. Corporate world does not want that extra time. If you find yourself in a situation where there's some great technological advance and you get all this time back in your schedule, you think that they're going to send you home to be with your family and pursue your hobbies and your dreams and everything else? Probably not. And this is just technology. This is how it happens. I don't want to make this exclusive to the physician world. I remember my mother, for instance, was an engineer, and she's older, and she used to have those giant grafting boards. And then they came out with all of the AutoCAD and the kind of programs that were promised to simplify and give them a lot of their life back by taking away a lot of that manual labor, but it didn't. It just, the expectation went up. It said, okay, well, now that you can work faster, here's more work for you to do. In the physician recruitment and sales world, there was a point at which laptops became the big thing, and those were given out to us. And it was this huge promise of being able to simplify your time, but it didn't. It actually made it a lot worse. You still had to show up in the office, and just like physicians, the world of recruitment and sales, very high attrition, very high turnover, very high burn. You work your 10 to 12 hour days on average, and then you go home and you use your laptop to continue meeting your metrics. This is kind of just how technology is, but you in the physician world want to be aware of this, as physician mental health is at an all-time low. It's a very dangerous situation. You think of heartbreaking situations like Dr. Lorna Breen, situations with so many medical students just dropping out or dealing with certain things that I'm not sure I can even say on YouTube. In the physician world, it's very challenging. Burnout is a massive issue, but unfortunately, that's not being addressed as much as it should. by the corporate executives, administrators, and overlords. Not always. Look, there are some amazing executives and administrators out there. I've worked with some of them, great people trying to change the world, but the reality is that's just not the majority of them. And CFOs, the goal is to push revenue, push revenue, push revenue. So if something is going to simplify the amount of time that you have, the expectation on their end, and you just need to be aware of this, is they're going to put more on your schedule. Your 20 patients a day, probably going to go up. You'll be seeing more patients, managing more intense emotional decisions, making more important rapid fire clinical decisions. AI might not cure your burnout. It might optimize your exploitation if you're not careful. So let's also now step inside the clinic room. Apart from the administration, the employment side of things, as a physician, you're going to be dealing with the fact that patients are going to be coming in with, you got ChatGPT Health now, you've had AI for a while. This is the Dr. Google that you guys have been dealing with when you got the patient that comes in there and they've already told you what their issue is, what their diagnosis is, and what you need to do. And I understand that is horribly insulting and it's incredibly inefficient. I understand that. And I understand that it's magnified even more now because someone will go to ChatGPT Health, which is, I think it rolled out earlier this year, but they just released it within a couple of weeks. It's got some changes or updates. So what do you do when someone comes into that? Look, at the end of the day, I'm not going to try to tell you that you shouldn't fight these important battles. You have been through the weight of the world with school. You have sacrificed so much to get through your undergrad, medical school, residency, fellowship, and it doesn't end in the classroom. You live and breathe this. You've put off relationships, you've put off life, and you get through this. And then to have someone walk in and tell you how to do your job, I understand that that's extremely frustrating. I'm not going to try to tell you what to do. All I'm going to try to do and be encouraging and speak to this. And I have a second channel, Overcoming with Bo Boyd. I have been through very difficult things and a lot of adversity in life. And in that channel, I talk about dealing with adversity, overcoming challenge, overcoming a lot of things. And so I have a particular penchant and passion for mental health and personal well-being. You have to decide, is every battle worth fighting? Someone comes in and they've got a bunch of stuff printed out. You can fight with them, and you can do that with all patients that day that do that and go home. And was it worth it? Are you feeling exhausted? Did you accomplish anything? Are you just feeling more bitter and frustrated? Or can you just brush it off and say, well, great. This is great. You did your work. That's awesome. Glad to see that you're taking this important. What we have to do here is we have to go through our steps and procedures for purposes of insurance and make sure that I'm doing my due diligence. So yeah, thanks for bringing this. Appreciate it. Let's talk about what you're going through. Not telling you how to do your job. Doctors or non-doctors shouldn't tell doctors how to do their job. It's just my personal advice. This is not going to stop. It's not going to go away. This is going to keep happening. Protect your mental health and your well-being, and you don't need to fight every single battle. Up to you. Just something I wanted to add as an additional thought. So how do we fight back? Outside of the clinical side of things, how do we address some of the more concerning things from the administrative side? Well, we do that at the negotiation table. The most important thing is to be aware that this is going to happen, that these are the kind of things that you're going to be dealing with. When I was a kid, I used to watch G.I. Joe. I loved cartoons. And at the end, there would always be some kind of moral lesson. And so they'd come and teach the kids whatever it was. And the kids would say, now I know. And they'd say, and knowing is half the battle. And then the other half is, I guess, actually battle. But knowing is important. You have to know these things and think about it, because a lot of times the other side is gambling on the fact that you don't. So what does that look like specifically? Let's run through a few things real quick. When you are interviewing for a position, make sure you are not only asking the very relevant questions. What's the call schedule? What's the base salary? What's the RVU threshold, partnership, whatever it is. But also, in addition to that, you're asking, does the health system provide licenses for ambient AI? What are the protections that are put in place? Are there technological fees that are going to be taken out of my salary to utilize these services? What about liability? Let's break these down a little bit further. Look at your productivity thresholds first. If a hospital is telling you that they're implementing AI, and even if they don't, chances are they're going to. You want to ask for a clause that locks in your mandatory daily patient cap. Do not let them tie artificial compensation to your workload. You also want to ask about any changes to RVU threshold. If your RVU threshold is set at a certain amount, but then AI comes in and the idea is, well, we can raise that now before you start earning your compensation. You want to make sure you're having these discussions on the front end so that that's not a surprise you find shortly after taking a position. Second, ask about technology fees. Make sure that if these things do roll out, that you suddenly don't have a dip in your paycheck or something that's coming out of your earnings to now support these technology fees and IT services that are required to utilize and maintain the service. And third, most importantly, liability. If you're using an AI scribe, if you're doing any kind of history and physicals, if you're doing any kind of summation, if you're doing anything and this AI scribe or this service hallucinates, misses a clinically important issue, and you're seeing more and more patients, whatever the situation is, you want to make sure that you're not at risk for this. This is uncharted waters right now. Your name is on the chart. The liability is most likely yours. You want to make sure you're asking who's liable for this. What protections are there in place for me? You have every right to demand clear language that indemnifies you by the hospital or health system, wherever you're working for any AI, or any errors caused by the use of systematic AI, especially if it's mandated. Treat yourself like the highly valuable asset that you are. An agent always protects their interests. And that's what you bring to the table. At the end of the day, none of these places would survive if they did not have doctors seeing patients, driving revenue. You have got to take care of yourself. That's why it's important to be aware of this. The landscape in healthcare is shifting faster than ever, and it has always been a fast-moving landscape. Corporate world is more than likely relying on you to be too busy, too distracted, too unaware, too overwhelmed to really be thinking deeply on a lot of these issues. If it's us or them from their perspective, it's not going to be the us. It's going to be the them, which is going to be the you. You want to make sure that you're aware of these things so that you're protecting your own interests, your own practice, your own mental well-being, and your future. I appreciate you watching this video. Thank you for following along. If this was helpful, I'd appreciate a share, a subscribe, give me a like. I'd love to hear a comment from you. I know that's a lot to ask, but I'm trying to get started on this channel. My goal is to make a difference on the candidate side to help the doctors, physicians, clinical executives out there that are trying to make a living and making an important major difference in our world that have sometimes the weight of the world stacked against them on the other side. Not always. Again, I try to be as objective as possible. I'm not here to pick sides. I'm here to help the physicians out there and others who are looking to better themselves and to better this world. Thank you for what you do. You are appreciated. I appreciate you following along. I will see you on the next one.